Hey and welcome, I'm Jimmy and this is my 2007 LX470 and I just finished installing this Elate Supercharger kit. So I went for the water to air intercooled version. I mounted the intercooler here behind the grill. It fits in nicely. I had to remove the center brace for the radiator support. I had to move this sensor over here and move the horns over to the side and extend the wiring for this horn. Other than that, it fits in really well here. Also, I used a hole saw and I hole sawed a hole here. I don't know if I'll be able to get it right there. And then right next to the radiator, I was able to fit the hose through the corner. I'm going to add like a protective plastic sheathing over those hoses where they pass through to protect them from any abrasion. The pump I mounted here, I've got this Torfab bracket for an air compressor, which I won in a raffle, and it was the perfect mount for this because I don't have an air compressor to use. I put the reservoir up here on a nice bracket and basically ran the hoses as they recommend in the manual. I went for a vibrant vacuum block, and I've got the big line is the vacuum line that goes from the port on the bottom of the supercharger, and then the other port goes to my piggyback ECU, and then the one on the right hand side goes to a boost gauge, a digital boost gauge. So with the 2UZ, you have to modify your water neck and shorten it by about 80 millimeters. You can see now it clears the belt just fine, but at the original length, it would interfere with the belt right here. So what you need to do is remove this part and take it to somebody who can weld aluminum and cut it out the section and weld it there. The instructions are really good, they go over it. This radiator hose, the upper radiator hose, I had to get a different one. I took my factory one to the parts guy at my local parts store and told him I needed it to be the same but longer right here, and this is the one he gave me. Here's the part number for it, and it works really well. It clears and it's the perfect size. Another thing you have to do is add this smooth side pulley. The reason for that is because instead of rubbing the ribbed side of the belt along this top idler, the smooth side of the belt's running along this top idler. So the fuel rails, they include spacers, which is really nice, and new O-rings and seals to use on your fuel injectors. But you will need to modify the return line. You can see here I have mine going up over and back, just a soft line. The front crossover tube you'll be able to reuse just as mine is there. The throttle body will be upside down from how it normally is, but it functions just fine. What you're gonna have to do, however, is extend the wiring harness so that it goes up and reaches. And then you can see I was able to retain the stock airbox. I think you can definitely get more power by going with an aftermarket one with a cone, but I'm gonna see if I can get away with using this stock one. What I did is I cut out the stock rib section and I used a 3.5 inch ID silicone coupler. So this is the stock 80 millimeter pulley that comes with the Elate kit, and this should give me about 5.5 PSI of boost, which should be more than enough to wake up this motor, compensate for my altitude up here, and it should give me like 80 to 100 wheel horsepower or something like that if I get it properly dialed in. So excellent, super happy with this kit. This is like the perfect wake up for an old Lexus like this. There's going to be a couple other supporting mods that you're going to want to do when you do forced induction like this. I have a piggyback ECU, and that's going to let me adjust the ignition timing and fuel and a couple other things, but most important is that ignition timing. The other thing that I've already pre-installed on this vehicle is a couple catch cans. So I have a catch can there and an oil catch can down there. And each one of those is plumbed into the PCV system on the valve covers. And basically the reason for that is to catch the oil vapors that are suspended in the gases coming out of the valve cover before they recirculate through the intake just behind the throttle body. Because oil vapors will lower your knock threshold and can cause detonation, and also it gums up and causes carbon buildup in your intake tract, and it would cause carbon buildup in the supercharger itself as well. So my vehicle is also running on E85 ethanol. I've got an E-Flex Fuel adapter kit that basically has an ethanol sensor that measures the ethanol content and the temperature of the fuel, and it adjusts the pulse width between the ECU and the injector. So the ECU doesn't know what's going on, and that kit just adjusts the fuel up and down depending on how much ethanol is in my fuel. And since I'm running on E85 now, I don't have to worry about running premium gas and spending a bunch of money and blowing out my budget on premium to worry about knock, because E85 is like the ultimate for boosted applications. But that's really cool. That I really love E85 for those reasons. You can check out another video where I put an ethanol kit on this Chrysler, and I actually go over more of the specifics of why it's so beneficial. But for a supercharger like this, ethanol is like, it's just perfect. It lowers your combustion temperatures. You can add more boost at the same timing. Like you can crank your ignition timing up without detonation. Your knock threshold for detonation is super high. That in a lot of motors you can never even reach it. So it's a really excellent fuel, and I'm stoked to start getting this tuned in. So in addition to doing the supercharger kit, I've also done some preventative maintenance. You can see by my nice blue sticker here, I did a timing belt change on this engine. It was just about 90,000 miles since the last timing belt change, about 5 years, and that's the window for this engine. So I did the timing belt, I did the water pump, I did the bearings, I did all the seals that I could get to on the front of the engine. So the crank main front seal, all the water gaskets for the water crossover necks underneath the supercharger, new gaskets there. While the supercharger and the intake manifold were off, I put a new starter motor on there because the starter is inside the V of the engine on these vehicles. So new starter motor, and also you can see my valve covers I painted red because I had the valve covers off, and I replaced the spark plug tube seals and the valve cover gaskets. And I thought, since had them off, I might as well paint them, right? Nothing more than adding a couple more hours of work to an already long project, but I think it was worth it. They look cool. In addition to that, I added a brand new radiator fan because my previous fan was cracked, and a new fan clutch, as well as the new fan pulley or bearing. And then also that's a brand new factory Lexus radiator. Brand new, OEM, so nice. And also a brand new factory OEM shroud because mine was cracked. So the benefits of going OEM on the radiator is you get this nice foam that seals up all the edges. And also these trucks had supercharger options in the early years, TRD, so the radiator presumably is already capable of keeping it cool. So did that as preventative, keep it running for another couple 100,000 miles, and also got a nice new shroud on there so we have perfect airflow through all the radiators. The last thing I did is I replaced all 8 spark plugs. I already had a set of Iridiums, the stock plug in there for about the last 100,000 miles, so it was time. And I replaced them with the same plug that they recommend you use on the TRD supercharged version of the 100 series, which is a heat range 7 spark plug instead of a 6. And also, I'll put the part number up on the screen, but it has a smaller gap. Instead of about 44 thousandths, it has a 29 thousandths gap. And the benefit of that is with forced induction, with the boost, the airflow into the intake through into the cylinders will literally blow out the spark if it's too big of a gap. Not all the time, and you can probably get away with the bigger ones, but a smaller gap helps stop that. Also, heat range 7 is one heat range cooler, and the benefit of that is the spark plug stays a little bit cooler during the 3 strokes where there's no combustion. The benefit is that that spark plug cools down a little bit before the next power stroke, and it doesn't cause it like a hot spot for detonation to occur. So there you have it. That's my supercharged LX470. I freaking love this truck, and I'm going to keep it forever, and now it's even better. Stay tuned. I'll probably have to get this thing on the dyno. I'm going to have to do a bunch of videos of it accelerating. I'm going to have to go like in the sand dunes and blast around, and we'll have to get it tuned and dialed in. So stay tuned for the next video. Thanks for watching.